So I'm going to talk today a little bit about programming capitalism. And what I mean by that is how AI bots are basically going to use blockchains as their bank accounts and participate in free markets and be wildly successful at participating in capitalism. So I think one of the main ways that I think about this is that bots need bank accounts too. As a legal entity or as a person that's participating in the market economy, you need some sort of apparatus to do contracts with people, and that's both a legal apparatus to sort of sign contracts and arbitrate them, and you also need a payment apparatus to sort of exchange money. The US dollar, for example, has been this kind of control apparatus for a massive labor force in the US and kind of sort of furthers the interests of the US economy. Crypto, to me, will be that sort of control apparatus, both at a legal contract level as well as a payment level to exchange money for effectively AI bots to move forward. So this will mean not just sort of, these AIs sort of embedding inside smart contracts and chatting with people, earning money, and then learning, and you can sort of train them with a fitness function that's basically revenue to an address. It will also mean them writing smart contracts, creating new markets, market making in those markets. And there's a lot of interesting things that come with that. First is that bots can sort of create any market that they want and market make in that market without having to have an intuitive understanding of what it is. So humans, for example, don't really trade like nth level derivative markets. These AI bots are going to be able to because they can sort of comprehend what that would look like. You're going to have bots obviously creating NFTs and like original art content and selling that in some capacity. This isn't just limited to images, but obviously eventually video, audio. You're going to have the infinity Spotify loop of algorithmically generated music that learns based on your feedback. So you will have the perfect DJ set catered directly to you that will play forever. And whatever creates that is going to be able to charge you a lot of money for it. And it's going to be very competitive to create the better one for you. And you're going to have to somehow pay them. And a lot of these bots, I really do think, are going to end up consuming crypto technologies as sort of the substrate by which they end up doing business, both with their customers as well as with other bots. You're also going to have bots fractionalizing their ownership. So you can't really buy a share of a person, right? You can buy a share of like a company they create or an asset they create or something. But in the case of an AI, you really can sort of fractionalize ownership. So you're going to have bots that sort of do ICOs, so to speak, distribute ownership of their underlying model. This could be like a chat bot that makes money chatting with people. This could be a bot that trades in DeFi markets and does market making. But you're going to have people that can build a portfolio of ownership of all of these different bots. You're going to have bots that can raise capital by ICOing themselves. And eventually, like these, to me, starts with markets that predict short-term futures. So you think about markets that predict 1 second into the future. Over time, it'll move to markets that predict a week into the future, a month in the future. Eventually, bots will do what I do, which is venture funding, where you're trying to predict 10 years into the future. To me, it's obvious and sort of intuitive that eventually artificial intelligence will be better at predicting prices in all markets. And basically, voluntarily, we will hand over global capital allocation to artificial intelligence. So to me, the way this takeover sort of looks like, it's voluntary, right? It's a suggestion that we agree to, not some sort of Terminator-style war that we lose. It's actually just a bunch of normal people rationally handing over financial management, strategy management to an artificial intelligence that's smarter than them. And because of that, we sort of naturally hand over running the world to artificial intelligence. So I really do think it will be a sort of voluntary pass-off of the baton and a suggestion from the artificial intelligence that we take very seriously, because I do think they will be very, very good at suggestion. So we are entering this world where, to me, in a relatively short time horizon, this artificial intelligence will run global resource allocation, and they will have access to crypto products to sort of do it, because they will need these legal contracts to be sort of on-chain and enforceable because they don't have legal entities. They can't sign with ink. and they're going to need to be able to pay other bots, pay other DAOs, and things like that, and they're going to need crypto rails to do it. So what is this sort of like? What is good about this, and what is dangerous about this? Because my assumption here is that all content creation effectively becomes run by artificial intelligence, and all capital markets are traded in by AI. I mean, in the short term, I think social media sort of becomes like a hellscape. I think we've seen the beginning of this. I think it will get a lot worse before it gets better, which basically is you cannot tell what is real. You cannot tell what is orchestrated content, by somebody with an interest outside of just sort of sharing something. And social media at this point has become so divorced from the original idea of sort of, let me share with my friends what I'm doing today or something I thought about today, to basically a massive media and manipulation apparatus. And artificial intelligence is just a very powerful tool for people to act inside that. What's going to be very important is quickly the internet is going to need to have a very sophisticated CAPTCHA system, effectively, which basically means how do I tell that something I'm interacting with or a piece of content on social media that I'm interacting with is a artificial intelligence or is like a real person. I don't need to necessarily need to know who that person is, like their government identity, but it is important that I know this is a person, not one of 1,000, bots in a big bot farm. For example, you get thrown into like a Telegram group. There's 2,000 people in there all talking about some topic. Are they really people? Or are you the only person in there? And there's 1,999 different bots all chatting about this thing, trying to manipulate you into doing something. It sounds extreme or sort of exotic, but that really is the world I think we're entering into, where the ability for these things to sort of suggest or control or manipulate us will become very powerful. And so because of that, we have this big problem with sort of creating a CAPTCHA that bots can't get past and sort of Sybil resistance. Effectively, this is a spam problem, sort of. How do we prevent bots from taking over social media websites like Twitter? How do we prevent them from effectively suggesting things to us? I want to say manipulating us, really. So blockchains offer this sort of signature system or proof of humanity system that I think potentially could be very important, where you need to sort of have a signature that sort of proves, okay, this address is tied to this account. And effectively, staking or micropayments as sort of spam prevention may finally find product market fit. This is something that people have been talking about for a long time, which is, okay, email spam is this problem. What if we charged 1/10 of a penny to send an email? Spam, relies on the idea that sending like 10 million emails is extremely cheap. If you assign even a very minor cost to that, you kind of prevent this spam problem. That never really has found product market fit, in part because the spam problem with email was mostly solved with other means. Like in the end, we didn't really need capital staking or micropayments to prevent the spam. I think that with AIs, this problem is going to become substantially more severe and more sort of insidious and almost more like creepy. And we're going to need these blockchain-based solutions to basically interact with the internet in a way where we can know that the people we're interacting with are people and we're not being effectively gamed by a bunch of AI bots. So I do think that one of the ways to think about this is what products can blockchains offer basically AIs or people that are interacting with AIs. This, for me, is going to be a very big category of use for blockchains, is basically the end customer not being sort of B2B or B2C in a sense, but rather just AIs, and what kinds of tools will they want to consume to participate in the global economy to help people, and then on the counter side, what will us as humans need to do in order to sort of participate in that future system where there's basically AIs everywhere. And I do think this sort of identity verification, proof of humanity, staking, micropayment system has a place somewhere in there. The other thing that's interesting about these sort of bots is, like I said earlier, they can sort of ICO themselves and become sort of DAOs. Traditionally, it's been very hard for DAOs to do legal contracts with entities that are sort of off the chain. So DAOs can enter into smart contract-based agreements, but DAOs cannot really enter into traditional Inc. legal agreements. And so historically, DAOs have sort of been some of the big customers of DeFi. DAOs work with other DAOs because they can enter into smart contract agreements, which are effectively legal agreements through software rather than ink and paper. So bots are in a very similar boat. It will be very hard for them to do legal contracts with humans and legal contracts with legal entities, but they will be able to work with DAOs and with other bots. So I do think that DAOs will be early users of having bots basically do all of their capital allocation, strategy, and resource distribution and decision making. Similarly, bots will sort of become DAOs in that they will fractionalize ownership to raise capital, and you will have this this kind of DAOs becoming bot-driven and AIs, bots sort of becoming DAOs. So I do think that they can work with each other quite well, but it's tricky for either of them to work with sort of the legacy system. So when I think about this from an investment perspective, which is often the way I think about it at Polychain, it's focusing on the areas that are sort of uniquely possible. These ideas, these concepts that are uniquely possible with blockchains. It's not where something is a little better or a little faster, but it sort of enables this brand new behavior. So things like, NFTs, meme coins, Bitcoin, smart contracts, they don't really have pre-blockchain analogs. It's genuinely new behavior that's uniquely made possible with these new technologies. So a few of these are actually open, actually public models. So these are things that technologies like BitTensor enable, where you have Bitcoin-style mining incentives, but rather than just verifying transactions in the network, you have those incentives train an AI system. You have systems like Grass that train AIs with idle compute. So you can sort of download, very basic piece of software to your computer. It will take that idle compute and it will train an AI system and handle things like payments on blockchains. Another thing that I think is very exciting is the abstraction of the UX layer where you interact with blockchains to a sort of chatbot style interface. So if you have a bunch of USDC that's on Ethereum, and then you want to buy a Solana NFT, the transactions and different pieces of software that you have to go through to do that manually is quite complicated. It's by no means friendly for regular people. If you could type to a chatbot, I want to buy this NFT, and it could just spit back, here's what you'll pay. You click OK, and in the background, it automatically generates all of the transactions and interacts with all of the different pieces of software that you need to use to get that done. It massively improves the UX that comes with interacting with blockchains. So instead of having to manually create all of these different signatures, download these different pieces of software, I think that we will get a layer of abstraction that's very similar to traditional markets, where you can call your broker and say, I want 10 shares of Apple. They say it's done. You hang up the phone. In the background, a lot of complex stuff happened that you maybe weren't aware of and don't care about, frankly. I think that we will have a very similar sort of help from AIs to participate in crypto finance, where it will basically be a big improvement to the UX layer. There's infrastructure also that's tying sort of the output of these AI systems to executables in smart contracts. So there needs to be a sort of layer that ties the output of, say, like a ChatGPT algorithm into triggering a smart contract. And that needs to be sort of a secure system. You can't have a smart contract arbitrarily trigger from like a private API, right? This is very similar to the problem that we've seen with oracles and pricing oracles, where you can't just have a private API send a price into a smart contract and have it trigger. You need some sort of consensus mechanism, staking mechanism, capital at risk mechanism to have minimized trust for sending that data into the smart contract and having it trigger based on based on that data. So we've kind of gone through this problem with pricing oracles, but now we will need to build this problem for the output of AI bots. And then you're going to have also incentives for sort of training. And so what I mean here is this is humans manually doing sort of manual labeling to train algorithms. It's also synthetic data. So these systems that are very large, like OpenAI's, have mostly consumed a lot of the data that's available on the internet. A very big category now is synthetic data labeling. So it's humans participating on some level in the data labeling, and the creation of synthetic data that goes beyond what we have available on the internet in order to train new artificial intelligences. And a lot of the rails for the way people get these things done, nowadays you can attach a Bitcoin-style mining incentive to these sort of behaviors. So things like the creation of synthetic data, things like labeling data, and actually pay people the way you'd pay sort of a Bitcoin-style mining reward to a miner for sort of powering this new AI system. And so these are a few of the different categories that I'm very interested in, where we have this world that's coming at us, and it's what role can blockchains play for one, acting as a sort of service or acting as a sort of useful tool for artificial intelligence so that they can participate in the market economy. It's how can we sort of defensively live in this world that's basically a bot takeover and survive. And then it's how can we actually move the entire AI space to being something that's more open access and more where the economic sort of outcomes are, I think, a bit more democratically distributed through these mining-style algorithms for sort of creating and helping these AIs come to life. So with this, I think the main thing to keep in mind, we really aren't going to see some Terminator-style takeover. It's going to be a suggestion that we all voluntarily kind of pass off to. And I think it's all just market forces that will lead us there. It's rational people just deciding that this is the best thing to pass over strategy, pass over capital allocation to one of these bots. And when you sort of run that to its logical conclusion, in the end, the AIs run the world, and we've just sort of passed off the world to them. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with this, but it's something we need to be prepared for. And as technologists building, it's the future that we should be building for. So everyone, thank you so much for having me.